I heard somewhere recently that graduates right now, they're gonna have anywhere from 8 to 10 different careers. Not jobs, but careers. Because the world is changing so fast. Nobody knows where we're gonna be 5, 10 years ago, but you could predict based on trends where things are going. You know, there's 3 A's that are affecting us. AI, automation, and Asia. Think about what AI is gonna be able to do in terms of artificial intelligence when it comes to simple things like taxes coming up, bookkeeping, or automation, or outsource to a third world country. So the 3 superpowers that I would focus on is the superpowers of learning, superpowers of imagination, of creativity, of strategy. These are things that computers aren't gonna be able to catch up in quite a while. So that's what you wanna be able to double down on: emotional intelligence, empathy, on bedside manners when it comes to doctors, things that machines can't do. Because really the future belongs to the creatives. Left brain is logical. What's your left brain? Logical, words, sounds. What's your right brain? It's imagination, it's creativity, visualization, it's emotion, and that's an oversimplification. But I'll tell you, the best readers tend to be more right brain, because they don't just hear the words, they experience the words. But going back, there is no magic pill, but there's a magic process. Don't look for the magic pill, look for the magic process. Turn it into a verb. And what I'm saying here is this: practice makes what? Progress. Practice makes progress. There's never a level of perfection because there's always another level. And so what I'm saying here is be fast. The E stands for exercise, which is practice. Now, fast. The F in fast. If you want to learn any subject or skill faster, I want you to forget. And you're like, Jim, you just did this whole thing on memory. Why are you talking about forgetting? Going back to like getting rid of old information. If your cup is full, it's really hard to learn new information. Does that make sense? So you kind of temporarily forget what you already know about a subject so you can put new information in. Here's what you want to remember. Your mind is like a parachute. It only works when it's what? When it's opened, right? But when I think about this, I think about this beginner's mind. Beginner's mind. That's what I mean about forgetting. Pretend you're a beginner. So that's what you want to forget. Actually, forget 3 things. Forget what you know about a subject so you can learn something faster. The second thing I would say, forget about situational things. If you're thinking about 4 different things outside this room, that literally leaves you 25% of your potential to be here to learn. And you're not going to learn faster if you're only using 25% of your presence and your resources. That makes sense? And I'm not saying, what I'm saying to do is this: don't fight it. Don't fight it, just write it down. This is tactical. If you're thinking about other things that are going on outside this room, just write it down. Because here's what you want to remember. What you resist persists. And so if I ask you to don't think of a big pink elephant, whatever you do, don't think of a big pink elephant in front of this room, pink polka dot elephant. What are you going to do? You're going to think about it because your mind can't process a negative. That's why we always do affirmations in the positive. It's not something you don't want, it's something you want. So don't try to not think about everything going on. Just write it down so you know it's there, and then you can focus. The third thing that you want to forget are your limitations, limiting beliefs. Because if you believe you can and believe you can't, either way you're right. Here's what you want to remember. You know who has a really good memory? What animal? Elephants. You ever notice the elephant at the circus and you wonder why it's tied to this rope, to the stake in the ground, and you wonder why it just doesn't like leave? Because it's an elephant, right? It is incredibly strong. It's incredibly huge. We could pull down the whole circus tent, but why doesn't it? Because since that elephant's been born, it's been tied to that same rope with the same stake in the ground. And when it was first born, it would try to get its freedom. It wants its sovereignty. It would pull, and it would struggle for days, maybe a week or so. But after a week or so, what happens? It learns something. It learns it's helpless. And in psychology, it's called learned helplessness. Because what happens over time? That elephant gets big and strong, and it's physically capable of escaping, but it's not mentally capable. Because all behavior is belief driven. Because you're thinking about, what does that have to do with reading? What does that have to do with your memory? Think about, you believe how smart you are. Do people have a belief how much they're worth financially? They're going to set that thermostat and the environment's going to reflect that. So you want to forget about your limitations temporarily. The A in fast and B fast stands for active. If you're struggling right now, it's because we've all had this 20th century education. And a 20th century education prepared us for a 20th century world, which at the turn of the century is working in farms and factories. And that's what a lot of the education system was tailored to. It's one size fits all, sit quietly, by yourself, don't talk to your neighbor, and so on. Now it's changed, it has changed, but the world's changed a lot faster. We live in an age of electric cars and spaceships that are going to Mars, but our vehicle choice that we choose when it comes to learning is like a horse and carriage. Do you feel that? Do you feel like you're falling behind more and more and more, that you can't keep up? Like, how do you get ahead in this world when you feel like you're falling behind? And so one of the reasons why is you don't want to be passive. Like, you don't want to just sit there and consume information. The human brain does not learn based on consumption. Your brain learns through creation, co-creation. And so you want to be active. So for example, how can you be more active when you're learning? Take notes, right? By the way, a really fun way of taking notes, they did a study and they wanted to find out the best and worst ways of taking notes. What do you think the worst way of taking notes was? The worst way of taking notes actually was pure dictation, word for word. That was the worst way. The people who were tested that did was verbatim did the worst on the test. But one of the best ways of taking notes was through key words and key ideas, mind mapping and such. A fun way of taking notes that I do that works really effective, that's whole brain, is I take a piece of paper, I put a line down the page. On the left side, I capture notes. On the right side, I create notes. On the left side, I'm writing down how to remember names, how to read faster, how to give a speech without notes, step by step. On the right side, I'm not capturing, I'm creating. I'm writing my impressions of what I'm capturing, questions I have about what I'm capturing, how I'm going to use this and apply this in the future, how I'm going to teach it to somebody else, how it relates to what I know. Because if my mind wanders, right brain wandering, imagination, creativity, I'd rather it wander on the right side. Another way of saying instead of capture, create, on the left side, I'm note-taking. On the right side, I'm note-making. So active, you ask questions and so on. So you be more active in the process. Here's what you want to remember, and you can write this down. Learning, like life, is not a spectator sport. How many people believe what you put in is what you get out of something? Because you take responsibility for it. And this is the thing, because it's not the teacher's job. Really, it's not. It's your responsibility to be able to do that. And when you take responsibility, then you can make the positive change. Recently, I got to introduce two of my modern day superheroes together. So I got to introduce two people for dinner who wanted to meet each other. It was Stan Lee and Richard Branson. Stan Lee, not Stanley, Stan Lee. Who's Stan Lee? Marvel, right? He co-created who? Spider-Man, X-Men, Fantastic Four, Avengers, Black Panther, all these amazing, like, my heroes. And we're in the car, and I asked him, like, Stan, you created all these incredible superheroes. Who's your favorite? Like, I need to know. And he's like, Jim, it's Iron Man. And I was like, that's great. He's like, Stan's like, Jim, who's your favorite superhero? And you'll see his picture on Instagram. He has a picture of Spider-Man on his tie. And I was like, it's Spider-Man. He said, without a pause, he goes, Jim, with great power comes great responsibility. Now, how do every single one of you know that? And you don't even remember. It's like you're in your DNA, right? The hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's work, it's like there. And I have dyslexia. I have this learning challenges, head injury, all this stuff. And I remember, I reverse everything automatically, and that's one of my challenges. And so I was like, Stan, you're right, with great power comes great responsibility. And I said the opposite is also true. With great responsibility comes great power. That when we take responsibility for something, we have great power to make things better. But here's the thing, and this is what I noticed with entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs have values, certain values, that we all have values, right? But a high value on that hierarchy is freedom. And you have this idea and this myth that it's like being an entrepreneur is just like this incredible thing where you just have ultimate freedom and it's just like no responsibilities and everything. Now in actuality though, a lot of them actually move away from responsibility and discipline, right? They don't want to have to do something because that's the opposite of freedom. That's a jail. But here's what I noticed. If you can't get yourself to do the things you need to do, whatever that is, then that's a prison. Because in actuality, discipline equals freedom. When you're disciplined, it gives you the freedom and the responsibility to be able to do the things. Because if you don't take responsibility for something, the ability to respond, responsibility, then you can't do anything. Then you're a thermometer again, as opposed to owning you being a thermostat and you could affect things out positively. And so my thing here is when I'm talking about active, is to be active because it's not the expert in front of the room, right? It's you. You take the responsibility and then you get the benefit. And when you responsibility, that takes me to the S and B fast. The S and B fast is state. And I'm saying this because it came up in terms of how people feel about something. And I think if there's one thing to take responsibility for, if there's one thing, be responsible for how you feel. Because all learning is state dependent. And so don't be at the effect. Don't be a thermometer, be a thermostat. So right now what you could do on a scale of 0 to 10, how do you feel? Like check in with yourself right now. How do you feel on a scale of 0 to 10? Now whatever it is, if I ask you to just up it 2, if it was a 7, make it a 9. If it was a 5, make it a 7. Can you do that? Notice in order to do that, you had to do one of two things. You had to do something with your body or you had to do something with your brain. You had to move your physiology or affect your psychology because your attitude affects your altitude. So you always want to monitor your state because all learning is state dependent. The last T, the last letter in FAST, be fast, is teach. I think this is a big one. That you learn, if you want to learn a subject or skill in half the time, learn it with the intention to teach it to somebody else. I want you to learn it as if you're going to teach it to someone very specific. Because here's what you want to remember. When you teach something, you get to learn it twice. So you learn with the intent to teach because intent matters. I compare your life to an egg. That if an egg is broken by an outside force, life ends. If it's broken by an inside force, life begins. All great things began on the inside. And you have greatness inside of you, and you have genius inside of you. And now is the time to let it out.